storytellers and readers. Welcome to another episode of I'll Read That, the show where your stories get heard. Whether you're an unpublished author, a self published independent, or you just have a really awesome story to tell, this is your space to shine. In each of these episodes, I'll be reading your submitted story aloud, giving you a voice, a platform, and most importantly, a chance to grow. You'll get feedback from fellow writers, readers, and other creatives to help you sharpen your craft and take that story to the next level. So, if you've been waiting for someone to just say, yeah, I'll read that, I think you found your place. Submit that story, get heard, and let's grow together. Don't forget, like, comment, and subscribe. And if you got something worth sharing, you already know. Today, we are in chapter 21 of the epic tale of Thassodar Jax by David Jace. Chapter 21, Species Log, Human Jax Earth, 21011. Humans have a unique relationship with death and danger. Large traveling devices, called roller coasters, grant them the illusion of lethal risk while employing a number of safety procedures to keep them safe. On such rides, humans scream in fear, throw their hands in the air in seeming abandonment of hope, and sometimes even become physically ill. Despite all logic, after stumbling off the ride, they go in line to go again. Despite taking enjoyment from the appearance of danger, they are not so eager to accept death when it comes. Valentina leaned against the wall and holstered her NEI pistol, stuffing the necklace into an empty belt pouch. She rubbed the side of her face. It was already starting to bruise from Urmi's attacks. She shook her head and straightened to her feet to figure out how to get all these people out of the storage room. She had thought they would be awake, and she could just tell them where to run. The wall lurched toward her. She looked down at her feet, trying to figure out why the floor was moving. Her feet seemed so far away. She struggled to focus on them as the edge blurred. Slash, struck. Uh-oh. The gas was still on in here, and it was affecting her. She turned to head out the door and tried to clear her head, but the room turned, tipping her sideways. She tumbled against the other wall and shook her head. Someone else slid against the wall beside her. This wasn't an effect of her disorientation. The room really was moving. On the back end of the room, a panel opened up, and a mechanical claw reached in, picking up the first person it reached and pulling them through the panel. Beyond, she could see the rest of the facility opening up beneath the storage room, now positioned at an angle. The claw dropped the person into a chamber on a rotating drum, and the door closed, sealing them in. The claw returned for the next person as the next chamber rose into position, its door open and waiting for its victim. Valentina couldn't help it. She screamed and started crawling toward the exit away from the claw. Halfway to the door, she glanced back, as though the claw might chase her personally, and saw one of the bodies on the floor had their eyes wide open, looking at her. It was Hermes. She hesitated. Damn it, she cursed and turned back. She found crawling down the slope toward him was even harder than crawling up. Thassodar looked back and forth between the shadows in which Lomax had vanished, the console that controlled the machinery, and the turning drum itself, which may already hold Valentina. For a moment he was frozen with indecision, but only for a moment. He reached into his jacket and pulled out his EMP grenade, set it to activate with a 10-second delay, set it on the console, and ran after Lomax. He counted as he ran. 1 second, 2 seconds. His footfall seeming to slow as he focused on the timer. 5 seconds, 6 seconds. He left the light behind and ran through the shadows, searching for some sign of Lomax in the darkness. 9 seconds, 10 seconds. There was a small boom from behind him, accompanied by a crackling sound. He turned to see the lights on the console go dark, and the light over the platform blinking out. The EMP had taken out the controls. He looked up at the drum and saw it turning in the lights from the top of the facility, like a demi-planet of death, slowly rotating. The rest of the machinery must be too far away for the EMP to affect. The claw at the top reached in for another victim. The empty chambers glowed red, but on the far edge of the drum, purple-lighted chambers were coming into view. The drum was half-loaded. He reached into his pockets. What did he have left to fight with? He pulled out the can opener and the Nova flashlight. He groaned and stuffed them back into their pockets, looking around and checking his other pockets. There must be something. His hand closed on a small box and he pulled it out. The warp implosion device. He looked up at the drum and started running. He would have to cross the center platform to get close enough. Thassodar took the closest stairs, which brought him to the center level. and he sprinted toward the broad platform where the others were fighting. Nearly halfway to the platform, Dorsch had one of Visu's guards pinned against the railing, his healthy tentacles wrapped around the battle staff, and he pushed Barco back against the railing, leaning forward. One of the injured tentacles snuck down along the floor and curled around Barco's ankle, lifting it off the ground. Thassodar sprinted toward them and pulled the Novolite from his pocket. The battle staff gradually turned, despite Barco's efforts, and pressed against his throat. His back bent over the railing. A flick of Thassodar's finger sent a harsh beam of light through the murky darkness right into Dorsch's overlarge eyes. Dorsch screamed and turned away, which was just the opening Barco needed. He thrust the staff forward, knocking Dorsch against the other side of the catwalk. Thassodar sprinted between them, and Barco leapt forward, striking Dorsch in the face with the staff. The center of the platform was a storm of flashing blades as Visu and Scholl danced from one side to the other in a deadly two-step of fencing acrobatics. Visu had him back to the edge of the platform, but Scholl danced along the railing, parrying the electric sword with his knives. Thassodar turned the Nova Light on Scholl as he reached the platform. Scholl jerked backwards and slipped from the railing. Only his superior reflexes saved him, as one hand grabbed the railing and the knife tumbled down into the darkness. Visu grabbed the extended wrist and lowered the point of the sword to his face. "Drop the knife," Visu said, and Thassodar charged on. He turned down the center bridge where Grote and Akon were exchanging blows. Akon's staff was making contact, but Grote was a beast of a fighter, and his fist dented the red chitin armor where they made contact. Thassodar's eyes narrowed. He leaned forward and picked up speed. He crashed into Grote at full speed and knocked him to the ground. Thassodar rolled over the top of his ugly face and regained his feet on the other side, leaving Akon to take advantage of the interruption. "Hope that hurt, Grote," he said, and hurried down the long, dark stretch of metal bridgework toward the glowing, rotating drums of death. He skidded to a halt in front of the rotating row of chambers and grabbed the rail to steady himself. The empty chambers gave off an evil red glow. He pulled out the warp implosion device and leaned over the railing, reaching for the chambers. He was too far away, and his fingers grasped the air. The chamber turned, bringing the next red-lit tube in front of him. He climbed onto the rail, holding on with both legs and one hand, and reached out with the device toward the chamber. It was still too far away. He climbed back onto the bridge and considered throwing it, but it was likely to bounce off the glass and fall somewhere below. He only had one chance. He couldn't waste it. Thassodar again checked his pockets. The only thing left was the can opener. He threw back his head in frustration and noticed the gears turning at the top of the drum. It was a long shot, but he had little to lose. He threw the can opener as hard as he could in an upward arc, and watched as it flew through the air, landing among the gears of the drum. He stood frozen as the can opener bounced against the gears before finally lodging between them. With a horrid grinding sound, the drum came to a halt. Thassodar breathed a sigh of relief and reached over the railing again toward the chamber before him. He stopped, horrified as he saw that this chamber was not red, but purple. The woman inside was waking up, and her hair was floating around her shoulders. He stared at the device in his hand. If he set it on that drum, it would destroy the drum, but also kill everyone inside. "You infuriating fool!" Thassodar turned just in time to see a large metal club swinging toward him. He jumped to the side, and the club smashed the railing, knocking the pieces off as into the abyss below. Lomax glared at him, his purple eyes glittering with anger. "You're ruining everything. I've spent decades on this operation." He swung at Thassodar again, forcing him to jump back. The gears of the drum made another loud grinding sound as the chamber shuddered. He realized it was still trying to rotate. The can opener wouldn't hold it long. Valentina tied Hermes' cloak around her waist, twisted it through her belt for good measure, and turned toward the door. The distance between her and the door was now a long crawl upward, and the tranquilizer gas was still on. At least with both doors open, it wasn't getting worse, but she had to focus very hard to accomplish even basic movements. One thing it wasn't affecting was her determination. "You're coming with me, you punk!" She pulled against the floor, using her feet to push toward the door. The claw picked up the last body from the group against the wall. As Valentina dragged Hermes' body another foot toward the door, the claw came back for another body, but found nothing in reach. Valentina kept pushing, panting with the effort of crawling uphill, while dragging his body behind her. The room shuddered and tilted up higher. Valentina screamed as she slid a foot backwards before getting her grip again. More bodies slid down toward the back wall. A man's foot clipped her arm as he slid by, and she screamed again. Sliding down the tilted floor, She scrambled for a new grip, but it was too smooth, designed to allow bodies to slide down it. She hit the back wall with a thud, softened only by Hermes' body. She rolled off of him and started crawling toward the side wall, pulling him behind her. She had to stay away from the opening on the claw. She could hear it again, the pneumatic hissing as it reached in, searching for another victim. It closed on someone behind her, and she breathed a sigh of relief as she touched the side wall, as safe as she could get. Suddenly she was jerked backward by the waist. She screamed and looked back. Hermes was in the grip of the claw and being pulled through the window, his cloak tangled in her belt. Pulled her along behind him. It pulled her through the panel behind Hermes. It pulled her through the panel behind Hermes and watched as the claw loaded his inert body into an open, red-lit chamber. As the glass door closed on Hermes, the chamber turned purple. The cloak caught in the door, leaving Valentina dangling below by her waist. As the drum rotated on, she clutched the cloak, lest it should come loose and drop her into the darkness below them. The chamber turned again and then shuddered to a stop with a loud grinding sound from above her. She kicked at the open air, but found no toehold. She looked for a solution, a method of escape. Finally, she gave up and just screamed, "Help!" Thassodar ducked another swing by Lomax, but the return attack caught him on the way back up. He spun, barely grabbing the railing as stars swam before his eyes. He blinked, looking down into the shadowy depth below the drum. The only lights that far down were from the energy storage chamber. He shoved off the railing and threw himself sideways, guessing the timing of Lomax's next swing. Another section of railing went flying away. "I'm going to destroy you, you measly maggot! How dare you get in my way!" Thassodar tired of dodging and rushed in, punching Lomax in his massive gut. "Already watched the planet get decimated by Grote once. I will not watch it happen again." Lomax grunted and brought the club down across Thassodar's shoulders. Thassodar dropped to his knees, the wind knocked out of him. He reached behind him in time to catch the next attack and stayed there, his knees pressed against the metal grating. Lomax leaned into the club, his weight pressing Thassodar toward the ground. "You know, Jax, that's the most ironic part of all this. Grote has been working for me the whole time. I was the one that sent him to your world in the first place. I'm the reason you're even here." He shoved downwards to emphasize each of the last words. Thassodar's eyes widened as he stared down through the grating at the energy collection chamber again. "Help!" Valentina's scream cut through the increasingly loud grinding of the drum and caught both of their attention. "That meddling little human!" Lomax turned to see her dangling below the drum, unwittingly letting up the pressure on the club. That's all that Thassodar needed. He moved forward instead of away, and stood up between Lomax and the club. Keeping one hand on the club, he reached into his jacket and pulled out the implosion device. "Hey, Lomax!" Lomax turned to look at Thassodar straight in the eyes, nose to nose. Thassodar threw his head forward with all his might and pulled back to see Lomax's nose was bloody. Lomax howled in pain and anger. "Have a snack!" Thassodar flicked the switch on the device and shoved it in Lomax's mouth, turning them both so that Lomax's back was toward the drum. Thassodar shoved him and let go of the club. Lomax stumbled backwards, his arms wildly grasping for the railing that was no longer there. His eyes widened as his back foot stepped into the air behind him, finding empty space instead of the metal bridge. Thassodar watched his friend fall. His cold blue features neither smiled nor frowned. Lomax tumbled off the bridge. He fell oddly slowly for one with such mass. His arms flailed around him, searching for a saving ledge that did not exist. There was no scream, no grinding sound of the gears, no throbbing of power, no sound of fighting, no sounds at all. As Thassodar watched his friend fall, he heard nothing for the long moment that he stood there. The last thing to vanish into the darkness was Lomax's sparkling purple eyes. A moment later there was a flash far below, and an echoing subsonic boom. The flash spread out and then sucked back into itself, taking everything in a 50-foot radius with it. The entire energy containment chamber became dust, and then less than dust, as reality collapsed in on itself. It sucked energy conduits out of the air, and the entire facility rocked, knocking loose random pieces of equipment. The chamber drum tilted with a lurch, and the grinding sound resumed, only to stop with a crunch as the can opener gave its last, and the drum again turned. Valentina screamed as the drum lurched, and the cloak slipped through her fingers by several inches. "Thassodar, help!" Thassodar backed up to the opposite railing. He crossed the bridge with only a few steps and leapt off the edge. He landed on the diagonal chamber in front of him, face to face with a bearded, spectacled man inside the chamber, who looked as afraid for Thassodar as for himself. Thassodar reached the next chamber and began climbing his way around the drum. He recognized Hermes in the chamber above Valentina and moved slowly, carefully down to the edge of the drum, 3 feet under which Valentina dangled. He held the sides of the chamber in a big hug, grasping the metal frame around the glass tube. He slid lower, letting his jacket drape below. "Grab my jacket!" Valentina reached up and got a grip on the bottom of the jacket before letting go of the cloak, which slipped another inch as she did. "I've got it!" "Hold on tight." Thassodar dragged himself back up the chamber, moving one hand at a time, pushing up with his legs until he was standing upright, and she was able to get her arms in onto the lower rim. He helped her up, and they worked their way back around to the bridge. Bisu and Barco met them at the edge. Akan is guarding the others. Grab hold of Barco's staff. Thassodar helped steady Valentina as she took a good hold on the staff, and Barco lifted her to safety. Thassodar followed. And that is the end of chapter 21. I paused a little bit because this character, Akon, is spelled 2 different ways. It's Akon, and then it's also Akon. I don't know which one is correct, so I'm just going to go with Akon. But there's also a couple little flubs in there, and it was just the way it was written. But beyond that, let's talk about the story. Lots of really good elements here. Lots of drama and tension. Um, I don't know if the can opener is there for comedic effect, and I understand it was part of the group of tools that was instituted in the beginning, but there should be something different. I don't know. Maybe have it more substantial, a little bit more meaning. There's got to be something that is definitive as to there could be something else. Maybe Valentina gave him something that had some kind of meaning. Maybe, maybe Thassodar was given something by Lomax that had some, other meaning. There's got to be something better than a can opener. I'm sorry, it's just there's better things that are capable of being done. But we'll see. We'll see what chapter 22 brings. Just if you have been following, chapter 22 is the final chapter. So, with that being said, if you have a story that you just want to be read or have been wanting to put out there, I want to read it. Send me those unpublished or self-published works to the email address in the description below, and you might be the next featured author on an episode of I'll Read That. Let's build this community where writers support writers and every story has an opportunity of being heard. Don't forget, like, subscribe, and drop those thoughts in the comments, because that feedback could really help another writer grow and develop into, the next, big icon of literary fiction or nonfiction. So, as always, keep writing, and I'll read that. I'll read